Hey YouTube, it's Brother Mark here. I hope you're well and good. It's Saturday morning here in the UK, and just want to share just a short video today. And it's on scripture that's not really often read. And I encourage people that are watching this video already to consider, especially the Old Testament, because we all have our favorite kind of areas, whether it's the Pauline epistles, or certain gospels that we really like, and that kind of really lean towards what we particularly enjoy, or what we're interested in. But we miss a lot out when we skip the Old Testament. And there's great instruction in righteousness and in doctrine throughout the Old Testament. I did a reading of Lamentations recently, and it's profoundly relevant and beneficial to today's Christian, to help us understand and to relate to us in Scripture. And this particular one is no exception. And it's a good question to initially ask you: when was the last time you read Haggai? And the answer is probably not for some time, and I suspect for most people. And I wanted to read some scripture from chapter 1. It's verses 5 to 7, and challenge us on the way that things are, especially nowadays, the materialistic culture, the culture of always continuing to push forward, to earn more money, to get a bigger, better car, a bigger, better house, and so on and so forth, and never actually being content and satisfied with the food and raiment that we should be, for example, right? And it's this that we're succumbing to as Christians, and that I've succumbed to. When I read scripture like this, by the way, I don't read it and think, oh, this is a way for me to just point at other people. I read this, and the reason I'm talking about it is because it speaks to me directly, and it affects me, and I sort of sit back and think, oh wow, I've been guilty of this as well. So let's read it and dwell upon it, and it's an example of great scripture that you can mine out from the Old Testament, and something that I strongly recommend. So verse 5, chapter 1, Haggai. Now therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Ye have sown much, and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. I think that's great scripture. And it just so happened, as I said, that I was I'm looking at the Old Testament, and been doing that a lot more recently, I think, because I've spent so much time in the New Testament that I've neglected the Old Testament in part. And it's important to look at scripture. And as I said, looking through this, I was just amazed at how pertinent, how relevant this scripture is. I mean, when I read this, I realize just kind of, what I've been doing, and it's quite convicting, really, especially when you, it's just the way that it's worded. This is what I love about scripture, the power that it has, right? Ye eat, but ye have not enough, you see. With our food and raiment, we should be satisfied, but we're not. We want more and more and more and more, whatever it is, right? Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. We're not satisfied with what we drink. It reminds me of it's like one of these energy drinks. You drink that, but it doesn't satisfy your thirst. In fact, it makes you hyper and feeling even worse, with the tons of sugar that's in that. It's kind of like that, right? You're not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. It's like we're not satisfied with the things that we have. We should be satisfied even with a modest abode. We should be satisfied even with a car that gets you from A to B. But we're all looking for this, this all singing, all dancing, all the bells and whistles, and the highest possible quality. And we always want to extend and grow, and we're not, like as I said, we're not satisfied with the house that we have, the room that we have. We always want a bigger, better house, right? And the same for our job. We always want to keep going and going and going, and hitting that manager position, then director, and then you're aiming for CEO at the end of it, right? And it's never being satisfied with what we have. And it's easy to fall into that trap, and I have a few times. And even recently, I've mentioned before, I got a new job. I work for an American company now, and it's a great job. But, you have to balance that between your needs and kind of what you want. And it's very subtle, that change from what you need and what you should be happy with what you want. And what you want isn't always good for you. And that's why sometimes if you ask for that, you ask amiss, as it says, I think, in James, because you want to really consume it upon your lusts. And if we're really, if we're really honest with ourselves, that's what we do fairly often. And, it's strange. It's like you sort of look back and you go, oh, I don't have any money or I'm struggling. And in reality, what you've done is put it into a bag with holes, just throwing money away on stuff you don't really need. Often because you're trying to fill this hole, this void, this dissatisfaction, these feelings of emptiness. That's why people do, they just go on shopping sprees, not because they need the items, they just want to feel a bit better, they want them. And, you come away not feeling satisfied really. And we've all been guilty of it. I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. We've all been guilty with it. So I love scripture like this. It's potentially a short video, but I love scripture like this that really points the finger at you and says, consider your ways. Are you really content with the food and raiment that you have? Are you really satisfied? Or are you still looking for more? And why are you looking for more? And it just creates this kind of, snowball rolling down a hill effect where nothing really satisfies you and you're always striving for the next step, It's interesting, no? So I wanted to share that scripture. It's not deep and profound. It's not a great teaching video or anything like that. But it's a set of verses that's, I've looked at that this morning and it's really struck me. And I'm guilty of failing that for sure, and that's why I wanted to share it, because it's had me thinking about some things, just how wasteful I can be, how much I want versus how much I need, how much I should be content with. So, I do pray that this video has got you thinking perhaps. If you want to, feel free to share a comment here in the video down below, or drop me an email if you like, biblebelieveruk@gmail.com. What I like to do in this channel, to the best of my ability, is to just show you scripture like this and say, hey, how does this affect you? Are you convicted in any way by this? Does this relate to you? And I think most of the time, people do agree with that. But it's interesting, right? So I'll leave the video there rather than continue on. It's just a short video. I try to do that if possible, to keep the interest up and to get you thinking, as opposed to just talking and talking and talking. And I'm guilty of that, by the way. It's something that I try and rein in a little bit. So just a short video today. Really, really great verses, right, brethren? So my question to you is also, consider your ways and reflect upon it. Be honest about it. You don't have to be honest about it in the comments here, of course, but I'm being brutally honest and saying that, yeah, I failed this. When I look at this, I think, yeah, that's me. It's me currently, for sure. And it's something that I want to get better at. The things I need versus the things I want, because the things that you want rarely satisfy you, and it just creates this continuing effect of wanting more and more and more, whereas in reality you don't need it. If you have a home, be thankful for it. Don't strive to get a bigger and better home. If you have a car, be thankful for it. Don't strive to get the latest, high quality model or the, big SUV or whatever. If you have a vehicle that can do the job, then great. Be thankful for it, right? And this is the attitude I think that's missing in me, by the way. I don't point to anybody else. It's missing in me for sure. But I'm trying to remain, modest and content with what I have, and it's a real challenge. So I wanted to share that scripture to say that, yeah, it's a recognized challenge, but if you recognize that's a struggle for you, then maybe there's something that you can do about it. Maybe a scripture like this, maybe reading it to you today is going to get you to kind of think, hang on a second, maybe there's an impending purchase or something that you're about to do, an expensive item that you're about to get. The question to really ask is, do you really, really need it? Why are you doing it? Why are you buying it? And when you buy it, is that something that actually has satisfied your need? Or is it satisfying even partly your wants? And I think that's the real question here. And it's a huge challenge. So Haggai, interesting, right? Interesting. So I encourage you to read these other books in the Bible, especially as I said in the Old Testament. You can find some real gems there. You can find some real gems. So just encourage you there. Thank you for watching. God bless and Godspeed.